Now to the perilous state of free speech in the UK. Former boxer Derek Heggie is behind bars awaiting sentencing for sending communication of an offensive nature. He made the offensive comments in 2 YouTube videos between August 2 and 8. Darren, the BBC reports here that in these videos, in these 2 videos, he referred to Muslims and made the comment, and I'm about to quote it directly just to show how offensive it is. He said, young white girls are being raped by these grooming gangs. Now, how is that something that sees you charged, jailed, remanded in custody at the moment and awaiting sentencing next week?
Absolutely, you're right. Remanded in custody. He's been there since August. You know, this is a massive breach of the law and order, because actually this man should not be anywhere near a prison cell, not for this anyway. He could be a total wrong-'un for all I know, Rita, but in this regard, he absolutely isn't. He's speaking out about grooming gangs, something that even a former Home Secretary acknowledged in Suella Braverman.
Yes.
Is she in line for prison now? Because she's actually acknowledged a specific cultural bent, a religious bent, within those who are committing primarily these grooming gang acts that we've seen in towns across England, and in Scotland, actually. And meanwhile, our criminals are walking free, Rita, because they're saying that the prisons are too full. Does it strike you as justice to do this? I think it's censorship. It's about the British system prioritising punishing words it deems offensive because it wants to have us all silence ourselves, to not raise uncomfortable truths. And the public is totally left wondering why their voices are ignored, and it's not doing democracy any favours. Actually, I would argue it's completely anti-democratic, because nobody ever consented to what's happening to our country, and we certainly didn't consent to thought speech or actual fully legal speech being criminalised in order to pursue dissenters like Derek. Because I tell you what, I said yesterday, I'm worried that I'm going to be in the slammer, because I've said time and again similar things to what Derek has said. And this is what they want, Rita. They want us all to be terrified into submission. And that's deeply anti-democratic.
It's incredible because, as you've said, senior ministers have made similar comments, and the comments are not, even if they were out of bounds, even if they were completely made on false presumptions, it shouldn't be something that lands you in jail. There is no threats of violence here. There's no incitement here. And the grooming gang scandal is the most shameful episode in modern British history. To have thousands of vulnerable girls systematically abused, sexually abused, raped, trafficked, and to have authorities turn a blind eye for many years because of political correctness considerations, because the girls were mainly white and the offenders were mainly from ethnic backgrounds. That to me is what should be talked about endlessly until that issue is resolved, because it seems to be still happening. You still have authorities completely preoccupied with PC considerations instead of actually administering the law without fear or favour. Well, let's talk about the BBC. They've done it again. They put together a list of the top 100 inspiring women. Only one of the women on the list, Bridget Baptiste, is not really a woman, but a Colombian scientist who is a trans activist who provides a queer lens on biodiversity, whatever that means. Darren, this selection has naturally caused a great deal of outrage among women's rights campaigners, and it comes just days after the BBC selected a Zambian soccer player, Barbara Banda, as its Women's Footballer of the Year Again, the only problem is old mate Babs has been axed from a major tournament for allegedly failing to meet sex eligibility rules. Is the BBC just trolling women right now?
Well, absolutely. You've got it bang on. This is a masterclass in how to undermine women while claiming to actually celebrate them. It's doublespeak in a complete absurdity. I mean, on the one hand, in that top 100 list, you had Giselle Pillicot, who was a rape survivor in France, who was raped by tens of men who her husband had invited in while she was sedated, drugged effectively, so that they could have their wicked way with her. And she's been bravely fighting for justice and an inspiration to actually women's rights and safety against domestic violence. But on the other hand, you've got this Bridget Baptiste, a man in a wig that they've decided is inspirational because they're talking about queerness, the watchwords of the moment. Since when did caricaturing women become an act of bravery? It isn't only ridiculous, though, Rita. It's actually offensive. And it's offensive because if a man can throw on a dress, babble about queer ecology, and land on a list supposedly celebrating women, then what does it say about how women are actually viewed by the BBC? That their desperate virtue signalling has actually rendered them the concept of womanhood absolutely meaningless. And that means that the BBC, as our national broadcaster, can't cover those issues in any serious or meaningful way. Because you have to ask yourself, could the BBC define a woman? Could it bring itself to do that collectively as an institution? And I don't think it could, because they've abandoned the concept, the idea altogether. And as you well know, you document it on this show day in, day out. The concept matters because women matter. And this bizarre caricature and celebration of it, I think, is an affront to women's rights and equality that have been long hard fought for over many decades, centuries in fact. And for the BBC to ride roughshod over them, all to appear progressive, I think is a dereliction of their duty as a national broadcaster, and they're frankly making us a national, international laughingstock.